precision. I should be free to sleep with whoever I want. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. The silence that followed could have choked a horse. Ray's beer bottle froze at his lips, and Cassie's eyes went wide as dinner plates. Me? I just sat there, processing what my wife of 8 years had just casually announced like she was discussing the weather. I'm Mitch Harlan, 38 years old, construction foreman for Riverside Building Company. I've spent my entire adult life building things. Houses, relationships, a life with this woman. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not stupid either. When your wife suddenly declares open season on your marriage during dessert, you know something's been brewing for a while. Sounds perfect, I said, forcing a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. Absolutely perfect. Jenna blinked, clearly not expecting that response. She'd probably rehearsed this moment, imagining tears, begging, maybe me storming out. Instead, she got sarcasm wrapped in false agreement, my specialty. Really? She asked, her voice climbing an octave. Sure, honey. If that's what you want. I took another bite of pot roast, chewing slowly while my brain started working overtime. Freedom for everyone, right? Cassie cleared her throat. Maybe we should... No, I interrupted, waving my fork. This is fascinating. Tell me more about these new rules, Jenna. I want to make sure I understand completely. Ray excused himself to the bathroom, probably to avoid the nuclear fallout he could sense coming. Smart man. I should have followed him, but something perverse in me wanted to see how deep this rabbit hole went. It's not about rules, Jenna said, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming on the table. It's about being honest about human nature. Monogamy is an outdated concept. Right, human nature, I nodded sagely. And when did you come to this enlightened conclusion? The slight flush creeping up her neck told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't philosophy. This was justification. Someone had already caught her eye, or more likely, she'd already caught theirs. Jenna worked as a real estate agent for Pinnacle Properties, one of those high-end firms that sold million-dollar homes to people with more money than sense. She'd always been ambitious, always wanted more than what a construction worker could provide. I'd known that going in, but I'd thought love might be enough. Apparently, I'd thought wrong. I've been thinking about it for months, she said, which was probably true. She'd been distant lately, working late, taking mysterious phone calls in the other room. The signs had been there. I'd just chosen to ignore them. Months, I repeated. Well, that's thorough of you. Cassie shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She was 2 years younger than Jenna, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and had always been the more grounded of the two sisters. Right now, she looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. Mitch, she started, maybe you two should talk about this privately. No need, I said cheerfully. We're all adults here. Jenna wants to explore her options, and I respect that. In fact, I think it's a great idea. Now Jenna looked genuinely confused. This wasn't going according to her script at all. Ray returned from the bathroom, took one look at our faces, and immediately sat down to finish his beer as quickly as possible. Great dinner, folks. Really great, but I should probably head home. Don't rush off on our account, I said. We were just discussing Jenna's new philosophy on relationships. Very progressive stuff. Uh-huh. Ray stood up, clearly wanting no part of whatever was happening here. Thanks for dinner, Jenna. Mitch, I'll see you at the site tomorrow. After Ray left, the three of us sat in awkward silence for several minutes. Finally, Jenna pushed her plate away and stood up. I'm going out, she announced. Have fun, I called after her. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Oh, wait, that's not a limitation anymore, is it? The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Cassie and I sat there for another moment before she finally spoke. Mitch, I'm sorry. I had no idea she was going to... It's fine, I said, though we both knew it wasn't. She's been building up to this for weeks. I just didn't want to see it. What are you going to do? I looked around the dining room we'd furnished together, at the pictures on the walls of happier times, at the life we'd built that was apparently no longer enough for her. I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for, I said. 2 days later, I put my plan into motion. If Jenna wanted to play games, I'd show her how it was done. The first step was gathering intelligence, something my cousin Lyle had taught me during his years as a cop before he went private. Lyle Brennan ran a small PI business out of a cramped office above Murphy's hardware store. He specialized in cheating spouses and insurance fraud. Not glamorous work, but it paid the bills. More importantly, he knew how to dig up dirt without breaking any laws. So let me get this straight, Lyle said, leaning back in his squeaky chair. Your wife announces she wants an open marriage, and instead of filing for divorce, you want to investigate her? I want to know what I'm dealing with, I corrected. What if she's already got someone lined up? I need to know who and how long it's been going on. Lyle studied me with the same expression he'd worn as a kid when he was trying to decide if I was serious about some harebrained scheme. Usually, I wasn't. This time was different. This is going to get messy, Mitch. It's already messy. I'm just trying to understand the rules of the game. He quoted me his daily rate, which was more than I made in a week, but I had some money saved up. Jenna didn't know about the side jobs I'd been taking, the cash I'd been putting away for the house renovation we'd been planning. Looked like those plans had changed. While Lyle did his thing, I started my own investigation. Jenna had always been careless with her phone, leaving it lying around while she showered or ran errands. She'd never bothered changing her passcode, our anniversary date, which felt ironic now. What I found in her text messages made my stomach turn, but not for the reasons you might think. It wasn't the intimate content that bothered me. It was the contempt. The way she talked about me to her friends, the jokes about my boring husband and his little construction job, the casual dismissal of 8 years of marriage like it was some inconvenient phase she was finally outgrowing. The mystery man's name was Trevor Lang, and from what I could piece together, he was some hotshot developer who'd been working with Jenna's firm on a big project downtown. Rich, successful, and apparently very interested in my wife. Their text exchanges went back 3 months, starting professional and gradually becoming more personal. By last week, they were making plans to meet at the Riverside Inn, a seedy motel on the outskirts of town that rented rooms by the hour. I screenshotted everything, uploaded it to a cloud drive, and started planning my next move. That Saturday, I called Cassie and asked if she wanted to grab lunch. Nothing romantic, just a friendly meal between in-laws. She seemed surprised, but agreed to meet me at Rossetti's, the Italian place downtown where Jenna liked to take her clients. Cassie arrived wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than she had at dinner. We ordered salads and made small talk about her job at the hospital, my latest construction project, anything except the elephant in the room. "How are you holding up?" she finally asked. "Better than expected," I said honestly. Well, it's amazing how liberating it can be when someone shows you exactly who they are. Jenna's always been selfish, but this is extreme even for her. I was about to respond when I saw Jenna walk into the restaurant with 2 of her coworkers. She spotted us immediately, and the look on her face was priceless. Confusion, then anger, then something that might have been jealousy. She marched over to our table, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor like gunshots. "What's this?" she demanded. "Lunch," I said mildly. "Cassie and I were just catching up. You remember your sister, right?" "Don't be cute, Mitch." "What are you doing?" "Having a meal with a friend. I thought you'd approve. You know, with your new philosophy about freedom and all." Cassie looked mortified. "Jenna, it's not what you think." "I know exactly what this is," Jenna snapped. "This is some pathetic attempt to make me jealous." "Is it working?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Jenna's face went through several different expressions before settling on cold fury. "We need to talk," she said. "At home. Now." "I'm not finished with my salad." "Mitch." "Fine." I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. "Sorry, Cassie." "Rain check?" "Of course," she said quietly. The drive home was silent, except for the sound of Jenna's fingernails tapping against her phone screen. She was probably texting Trevor, or her friends, or whoever else was part of her new support network. I didn't care anymore. At home, she exploded. "How dare you drag my sister into this?" "Into what? Lunch?" "You know what I mean, this juvenile attempt to get back at me." I sat down on the couch and looked at her, really looked at her. Jenna was beautiful, no question about that. Blonde hair, green eyes, the kind of figure that turned heads when she walked into a room. But standing there in our living room, face flushed with anger, she looked like a stranger. "Here's what I don't understand," I said calmly. "You want an open marriage, you want the freedom to see other people, but when I have lunch with your sister, completely innocent, by the way, you lose your mind. So which is it, Jenna? Are we free to do what we want, or aren't we?" "That's different." "How?" Because it just is." "Ah, the old because I said so argument. Very sophisticated." She started pacing, her heels wearing a path in our carpet. "You're trying to manipulate me." "I'm trying to understand the rules. You said you wanted freedom, I'm giving it to you. But apparently, freedom only goes one way in your version of marriage." "I never said you couldn't see other people." "You didn't have to." Your reaction today said it all. She stopped pacing and stared at me. For a moment, I thought she might actually be considering what I was saying. Then her phone buzzed, and whatever clarity she'd found disappeared. "I'm going out," she said, grabbing her purse. "Give Trevor my regards," I called after her. She froze in the doorway. "What did you say?" "You heard me." "How do you—" She caught herself, but it was too late. "How do I know about Trevor?" "Lucky guess." She left without another word, and I knew the real war was about to begin. Lyle called me Monday morning with his preliminary report. I met him at Murphy's Diner, a greasy spoon that served the best coffee in town and minded its own business. Perfect for sensitive conversations. "Your wife's been busy," he said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "Trevor Lang, 42, divorced, owns Lang Development. He's been working on that new shopping complex downtown." "The one Jenna's been involved with?" "That's the one. They've been meeting regularly for the past 4 months, supposedly about the project. But according to my sources, their meetings have been getting more personal." I opened the folder and found photos of Jenna and Trevor at various locations around town, restaurants, coffee shops, and yes, the Riverside Inn. Nothing explicit, but the body language told the whole story. "There's more," Lyle continued. "Trevor's got a reputation. This isn't his first affair with a married woman. Word is, he likes the challenge." "What about his divorce?" "Wife caught him cheating. Took him for half of everything, but he bounced back. Guy's got more money than sense." I studied the photos, feeling strangely detached. Seeing the evidence should have hurt more, but mostly I felt vindicated. My instincts had been right. "What do you want to do with this?" Lyle asked. "Nothing yet. Keep watching them. I want to know their patterns, where they go, when they meet, everything. And then? Then I'm going to give my wife exactly what she asked for." That afternoon, I was working on a kitchen renovation when Ray pulled me aside. "You okay, boss? You've been quiet all week." Ray Martinez was my best worker and closest friend on the crew. We'd been through a lot together. Job site accidents, difficult clients, the usual drama that comes with construction work. He was one of the few people I trusted completely. "Jenna and I are having some problems," I said. "The dinner thing?" "Among other things." Ray nodded. He'd been married to his high school sweetheart for 15 years, had 3 kids, and couldn't imagine why anyone would want to complicate their life the way Jenna was complicating ours. "You want to talk about it?" "Not really, but I might need some help with something soon." "Whatever you need, man. You know that." I did know that, which made what happened next even more painful. Thursday night, I was having a beer at O'Malley's Tavern when Dave Peterson and Jim Walsh walked in. Dave and Jim had been my friends since high school. We'd played football together, double-dated, been each other's best men. They were also Jenna's friends, part of the social circle we'd built over the years. They saw me at the bar but didn't come over immediately. Instead, they got their drinks and found a table in the corner, whispering like a couple of conspirators. Finally, Dave approached me. "Hey, Mitch, how's it going?" "Can't complain." "You?" "Good, good." He fidgeted with his beer bottle. "Listen, we heard about the situation with you and Jenna." "What situation is that?" "Come on, man. The whole town's talking about it. The open marriage thing. I should have known. In a town this size, secrets had a half-life of about 24 hours. Jenna had probably told her friends, who told their husbands, who told everyone else. What about it?" "Well, we just think, maybe you should reconsider. I mean, Jenna's a good woman. Maybe you could work things out." I stared at him. "Work things out? Dave, she's the one who wanted this arrangement." "Yeah, but maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe she was just going through something, you know? Women get ideas sometimes." "Ideas." "Right. And maybe if you were more, I don't know, romantic or something, she wouldn't need to look elsewhere." The bar suddenly felt very quiet, even though the jukebox was still playing and people were still talking. I could feel other patrons listening to our conversation, waiting to see how I'd react. "So this is my fault?" "That's not what I'm saying. It sounds like that's exactly what you're saying." Jim joined us then, probably sensing the tension. "Hey, Mitch, we're just trying to help." "Help how?" "By telling me I should accept my wife cheating on me." "It's not cheating if you agreed to it," Dave pointed out. "I never agreed to anything. She announced her intentions, and I chose not to fight her on it. There's a difference." "Look," Jim said, "Jenna's our friend too. We've known her for years. She's not a bad person." "I never said she was." "Then why are you being so stubborn about this? Why can't you just forgive her and move on?" The question hit me like a physical blow. These were supposed to be my friends, people who'd known me for 20 years, and they were taking her side. Not just taking her side, they were making me the villain in the story. "You know what?" I stood up and threw a $10 bill on the bar. "You're right. I should be more understanding. After all, what's 8 years of marriage compared to my wife's need for excitement?" Mitch, don't be like that. No, I get it. I'm just a construction worker. I should be grateful she stayed with me this long, right? I should probably thank Trevor Lang for taking her off my hands. The mention of Trevor's name made them both flinch, so they knew about him too. We're just trying to look out for you, Dave said weakly. By telling me to roll over and accept being humiliated, that's looking out for me? Sometimes you have to swallow your pride. My pride? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think this is about pride? I looked around the bar, at the faces pretending not to watch our drama unfold. These were people I'd known my whole life, people I'd worked for, drank with, considered friends, and they were all waiting to see if I'd be man enough to fight for my marriage or pathetic enough to just accept whatever scraps my wife threw me. Thanks for the advice, I said. Really, it's good to know where I stand. I left them there and walked home through the cold October night, my breath visible in the streetlights. By the time I reached my front door, I'd made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to see what Mitch Harlan was really capable of, I'd show them. The next morning, I put my plan into action. If Jenna wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. The first step was leveling the playing field. I called Cassie at the hospital during her lunch break. I need to ask you a favor, I said. What kind of favor? The kind that might make your sister very angry. There was a long pause. What do you have in mind? Dinner, Saturday night. Somewhere public where we'll be seen. Mitch, I don't think that's a good idea. It's not a date, Cassie. It's theater. Jenna needs to understand that her new rules apply to everyone. She's still my sister. And she's still my wife. But that didn't stop her from humiliating me in front of half the town. Another pause. What happened? I told her about my conversation with Dave and Jim, about how quickly my friends had turned into Jenna's advocates. By the time I finished, Cassie was quiet for a long time. I'll pick you up at 7, she finally said. Saturday night, I put on my best shirt and took Cassie to Romano's, the fanciest restaurant in town. The kind of place where reservations were hard to get and everyone went to see and be seen. Cassie looked beautiful in a black dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. She'd done her hair and makeup, and when we walked into the restaurant, every eye in the place turned to look at us. I feel like we're putting on a show, she whispered as the hostess led us to our table. We are, I said. The question is whether the audience gets the point. We ordered wine and made conversation about safe topics, her work, my latest projects, anything except the obvious. But I could see people at other tables whispering, pulling out their phones, probably texting their friends about Mitch Harlan's dinner companion. Halfway through our meal, my phone started buzzing with text messages. I ignored them, but Cassie noticed. Jenna? She asked. I checked the screen. 3 messages, each more frantic than the last. Where are you? People are saying you're at Romano's with my sister. We need to talk. Now. I showed the messages to Cassie, who winced. She's not happy. Good. Now she knows how it feels. Mitch, maybe we should... Should what? Go home? Hide? Let her dictate the terms of engagement? Cassie studied my face in the candlelight. This isn't really about dinner, is it? No, it's not. What's it about? I thought about how to answer that. It wasn't about revenge exactly, though that was part of it. It wasn't about winning, though I intended to do that too. It was about something more fundamental. Respect, I said finally. For 8 years, I've been the understanding husband, the one who compromised, who bent over backward to make her happy, and where did it get me? She announces she wants to sleep around, and somehow I'm the bad guy for not being thrilled about it. So, you're teaching her a lesson. I'm showing her that actions have consequences. She wants to rewrite the rules of our marriage? Fine, but she doesn't get to do it unilaterally. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Answer it, Cassie said. Hello, Jenna? What the hell do you think you're doing? Her voice was so loud that people at nearby tables could probably hear her. Having dinner. You should try it sometime. It's this thing people do when they're hungry. With my sister. Yes, with your sister. She's excellent company, much better than some people I could mention. This is sick, Mitch. Using Cassie to get back at me. I'm not using anyone. Cassie's a grown woman who can make her own decisions about who she has dinner with. Put her on the phone. I looked at Cassie, who shook her head firmly. She doesn't want to talk to you right now. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. Really? I'm acting like a child? That's interesting, coming from someone who announced she wanted an open marriage during dinner like she was asking for the salt. The line went quiet for a moment. When Jenna spoke again, her voice was different, lower, more controlled. Come home, Mitch. We need to discuss this. I'm not finished with my dinner. Mitch? What, Jenna? What exactly do you want to discuss? How I'm supposed to react when my wife decides she wants to sleep with other men? What the appropriate response is when my friends tell me I should just accept it and move on? Your friends? Dave and Jim. They cornered me at O'Malley's, told me I should be more understanding, more romantic. Maybe then you wouldn't need to look elsewhere. Silence. Did you put them up to that? I asked. No, because it's interesting how quickly everyone decided this was my fault, how I'm the one who needs to change, who needs to be more accommodating. Nobody said it was your fault. Didn't they? Because that's sure what it sounded like to me. Cassie was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe? Or possibly admiration? Just come home, Jenna said. Please. I'll be home when I'm ready to be home. Don't wait up. I hung up and turned off the phone. Feel better? Cassie asked. Actually, yes. I do. We finished dinner in relative peace, though I could feel the weight of all those stares and whispered conversations. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know that Mitch Harlan had taken his sister-in-law to Romano's while his wife was presumably with her boyfriend. When I dropped Cassie off at her apartment, she hesitated before getting out of the car. Mitch, be careful. I know Jenna can be selfish, but she's still family. And this thing you're doing, it could get out of hand. It's already out of hand. I'm just evening the score. And then what? Where does this end? It was a good question, one I'd been asking myself. The truth was, I didn't know where it ended. I only knew that I was tired of being the victim in my own life. I guess we'll find out, I said. When I got home, Jenna was waiting in the living room, still dressed for whatever she'd been doing that evening. She looked like she'd been crying, but I wasn't sure if it was from anger or sadness. We need to set some ground rules, she said. I almost laughed. Now you want rules? This can't work if we're trying to hurt each other. This can't work, period. But you knew that when you started it. I thought you understood. I understood perfectly. You want the security of marriage and the excitement of being single. You want me to pay the bills and keep the house running while you go off and play with your developer boyfriend. It's not like that, isn't it? Then explain it to me, Jenna. Make me understand how this is supposed to work. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. Because there was no good answer. There was no version of this arrangement that didn't end with someone getting hurt, and we both knew it. I never meant for it to go this far, she said finally. Then you should have thought of that before you opened your mouth. I went upstairs to bed, leaving her sitting alone in the living room. As I brushed my teeth, I could hear her on the phone downstairs, probably calling Trevor or one of her friends to complain about her unreasonable husband. Let her complain. I was just getting started. Monday morning brought a new development. I was reviewing blueprints in the construction trailer when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Mitch Harlan. Mr. Harlan, this is Trevor Lang. I think we should talk. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly very interested. Do we? I believe we have a mutual interest in resolving this situation amicably. What situation is that, Trevor? A pause. I think you know. Actually, I don't. Why don't you enlighten me? Look, I know this is awkward, but we're all adults here. Maybe we could meet for coffee, discuss things like civilized people. The arrogance was breathtaking. This guy was sleeping with my wife and wanted to have a civilized conversation about it over coffee. Sure, I said. How about Murphy's Diner on Main Street? 1:00. Perfect. I think you'll find I'm a reasonable man. I'm sure you are. I hung up and immediately called Lyle. Trevor Lang just asked me to meet him for coffee. Interesting. What do you think he wants? Probably to buy me off. Convince me to give Jenna a divorce so they can ride off into the sunset together. You going to meet with him? Absolutely. And I want you there with a camera. Mitch? Not to blackmail him, just to document whatever he says. I have a feeling this conversation is going to be very educational. At 1:00 sharp, I walked into Murphy's Diner and spotted Trevor immediately. He was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of confident smile that came from never having to worry about money. He stood up when he saw me, extending his hand like we were old friends. Mitch? Thanks for coming. Please, sit down. I ignored his hand and took the seat across from him. What do you want, Trevor? Straight to the point. I like that. He signaled the waitress for coffee. I want to discuss the situation with Jenna. What about it? Well, I understand this is difficult for you. Change always is. But I think if we approach this maturely, we can find a solution that works for everyone. A solution. Right. Look, I'm not going to pretend this isn't complicated, but Jenna and I have developed feelings for each other. Real feelings. And I think it would be best for everyone if we could formalize the situation. I stared at him. Formalize it how? Well, obviously she'd need to be free to pursue our relationship properly, and I'd be happy to make sure you're compensated fairly for any inconvenience. Compensated. I'm a wealthy man, Mitch. I could make sure you're taken care of. A nice settlement, maybe help you start your own construction company. You'd never have to worry about money again. The waitress brought our coffee, and I took a sip while processing what I'd just heard. This bastard was trying to buy my wife from me like she was a used car. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want to pay me to divorce my wife so you can have her? I prefer to think of it as helping everyone move forward in a positive way. How much? Excuse me? How much are you offering? Trevor's eyes lit up. He thought he had me. Well, I was thinking maybe $50,000 to start. Depending on how smoothly things go, there could be more. I nodded thoughtfully. $50,000. That's a lot of money. It is. And like I said, there could be more. I believe in being generous with people who are reasonable. And if I'm not reasonable? His smile faltered slightly. Well, I hope it won't come to that. But Jenna's made her choice, Mitch. She's going to be with me regardless of what you decide. The only question is whether this happens the easy way or the hard way. The hard way. Messy divorces help no one. Lawyers get rich, everyone else gets hurt. Why put yourselves through that when we could handle this like gentlemen? I finished my coffee and stood up. Thanks for the offer, Trevor. It's been very educational. So you'll consider it? Oh, I'll definitely consider it. I left him sitting there, probably thinking he'd made progress. What he didn't know was that Lyle had been sitting 3 tables away, recording every word on his phone. That evening, I played the recording for Ray while we had a beer at his house. His wife Maria was putting the kids to bed, and we sat on his back porch watching the sun set over the neighborhood. This guy's got some balls, Ray said when the recording finished. $50,000. Like I'm selling him a truck. What are you going to do? I'm going to show him what the hard way looks like. Ray studied my face in the fading light. You sure about this, Mitch? Once you start down this road, there's no going back. I crossed that line when he made his offer. When Jenna decided I was disposable, when my friends told me to just accept being a cuckold. Your friends are idiots. Maybe, but they're not wrong about one thing. This is going to get ugly. You need help? I might. You still willing? Ray clinked his beer bottle against mine. Whatever you need, brother. The next morning, I put phase 2 of my plan into motion. If Trevor wanted to play hardball, I'd show him what a real construction worker could do when he set his mind to it. I started with his car. Trevor drove a silver BMW that probably cost more than I made in 2 years. He parked it in the same spot every day outside Pinnacle Properties, right under a streetlight where everyone could see it. At 3 a.m, I paid his car a visit. I didn't damage it. That would have been illegal. Instead, I decorated it. Bumper stickers, lots of them. Honk if you love adultery. My other car is my mistress's husband's. I break for home wreckers. But the piece de resistance was the sign I zip-tied to his antenna. For sale, slightly used sugar daddy. Comes with inflated ego and small penis complex. By 8 a.m., half the town had seen it. By 9, it was on social media. By 10, Trevor was calling me, screaming into the phone. Do you have any idea what you've done? Decorated your car? Yeah, I thought it needed some personality. I'll have you arrested. For what? Expressing my opinion. Last I checked, that was still legal. This is harassment. No, Trevor. Harassment is trying to buy someone's wife. This is just commentary. I hung up and went back to work, whistling an old Johnny Cash song. The war had officially begun, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The fallout from Trevor's car decoration was swift and predictable. By noon, Jenna was at the construction site, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. What is wrong with you? She shouted, not caring that my entire crew could hear her. Good morning to you too, honey. How's your boyfriend doing? He's humiliated. The whole town is laughing at him. Really? That's terrible. Maybe he should have thought about that before he tried to buy me off. That stopped her cold. What are you talking about? Ask Trevor. I'm sure he'll fill you in. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and stalked back to her car. I could see her on the phone before she'd even pulled out of the parking lot. Ray walked over, grinning. Boss, you are one crazy bastard. Just getting started. That afternoon, Lyle called with more intelligence. Your boy Trevor's been busy, he said. Turns out he's got a history of this kind of thing. 3 affairs in the past 5 years, all with married women, all ended the same way. How's that? He gets bored and moves on. Usually takes about 6 months. Jenna know about this? Doubt it. He's good at making each one feel special, like she's the only one who understands him. I thought about that. Jenna was many things, but she wasn't stupid. If she knew Trevor's pattern, she might reconsider her choices. Then again, she might not. People had a way of believing what they wanted to believe, especially when it came to love. That evening, I was surprised to find Cassie waiting for me when I got home. She was sitting on my front porch looking worried. "We need to talk," she said. "About what?" "About what you did to Trevor's car. About this whole situation. It's getting out of hand, Mitch." I unlocked the door and let us both inside. "Want some coffee? I want you to stop this before someone gets hurt." Someone already got hurt. Me, remember? That's not what I mean, and you know it. I poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from her at the kitchen table. "What did Jenna tell you?" "She said Trevor wants to help you start your own business, that he's trying to be decent about this." "Is that what she calls it? Isn't it?" I pulled out my phone and played the recording of my conversation with Trevor. Cassie's expression changed as she listened, going from skeptical to shocked to disgusted. "Oh my God," she said when it finished. "He was trying to buy you off? $50,000, like I was selling him a used pickup truck. Does Jenna know about this? I doubt it. Trevor probably told her he was being generous, helping me transition to my new life as a divorced man." Cassie was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee cup. When she finally looked up, her expression had changed. "There's something else you should know," she said. "Something I probably should have told you weeks ago." "What?" Trevor approached me first. The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" 3 months ago, at that charity fundraiser downtown, Jenna introduced us, and later that night, he cornered me in the parking lot. Started talking about how beautiful I was, how he'd love to take me to dinner. "What did you do?" I told him I wasn't interested. That he was there with my sister, for God's sake. But he kept pushing, said Jenna would never have to know. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "You never told Jenna?" I thought about it. But she seemed so happy, and I figured he'd back off once I made it clear I wasn't interested. But he didn't back off. No, he started calling me, texting me. Nothing explicit, just friendly messages. Asking about work, wanting to grab coffee. I kept turning him down, but he was persistent. When did it stop? About a month ago, right around the time Jenna started acting strange. The timeline clicked into place. Trevor had been pursuing Cassie, got rejected, and moved on to Jenna. My wife was his second choice, his consolation prize. "She doesn't know, does she?" I said. "I don't think so. And Mitch, I don't think you should tell her. Not now, not like this." "Why not?" "Because she'll think we're ganging up on her. She'll think this is some elaborate lie we cooked up to break them up." She was probably right. Jenna was already paranoid about my relationship with Cassie. If she found out Trevor had hit on her sister first, she'd either refuse to believe it or find a way to blame us for it. "There's more," Cassie continued. "I did some checking of my own. Trevor's been married twice before. Both wives divorced him for cheating. Lyle found the same thing. Did he also find out about the restraining order? That was new. What restraining order? His second wife filed one after their divorce. Claimed he was stalking her, harassing her at work. It was dropped after 6 months, but still. I leaned back in my chair, processing this new information. Trevor wasn't just a cheater, he was potentially dangerous, and my wife was completely under his spell. "What are you going to do?" Cassie asked. "I'm going to finish what I started." "Mitch, no, listen to me. This guy is bad news. If Jenna won't see it on her own, I'll have to show her." "How?" I thought about that. The car decoration had been satisfying, but ultimately pointless. Trevor would just get it cleaned up and move on. If I wanted to really get his attention, I needed to hit him where it hurt. "His business," I said. "Everything I've learned about Trevor tells me he's the kind of guy who cuts corners, bends rules. If I dig deep enough, I'll find something." "That's dangerous territory, Mitch." "So is letting my wife get involved with a stalker." Cassie reached across the table and took my hand. "Just promise me you'll be careful. This isn't just about revenge anymore." It never was just about revenge. Then what was it about? I looked at her, really looked at her. Cassie had always been the steady one, the voice of reason in a family full of drama. She'd tried to warn me about Trevor without betraying her sister, had supported me even when it put her in an impossible position. It's about not letting them win, I said. It's about showing everyone in this town that Mitch Harlan isn't someone you can just push around and forget about. And after you've shown them? Then what? It was the same question she'd asked before, and I still didn't have a good answer. All I knew was that I couldn't stop now, not when I was finally fighting back, not when I was finally winning. I guess we'll find out, I said. That night, after Cassie left, I sat in my garage and made a list of everything I knew about Trevor Lang. His business, his history, his weaknesses. If he wanted to play hardball, I'd show him what a real player looked like. The gloves were officially off. The next phase of my plan required patience and precision. I spent 3 days researching Trevor's business dealings, using every connection I had in the construction industry. What I found was exactly what I'd expected. Corners cut, permits rushed, inspections that should have failed but somehow didn't. The smoking gun came from an unlikely source. Mrs. Eleanor Grafton, my 70-year-old neighbor who had a reputation for sticking her nose where it didn't belong. She'd been complaining for weeks about the construction noise from Trevor's downtown shopping complex. That man's running a shoddy operation, she told me over the fence. My nephew works for the city inspector's office, and he says they've had to go back 3 times because the work wasn't up to code. Really? Oh yes, something about the electrical work not being properly inspected. And don't get me started on the parking lot drainage. First heavy rain we get, that whole area is going to flood. I thanked Mrs. Grafton for the information and made some calls. It turned out she was right. Trevor's project had multiple code violations that had been overlooked or hastily corrected. More importantly, I knew the electrical contractor he was using, Danny Kowalski, who owed me a favor from a job we'd worked together 2 years ago. Danny met me at O'Malley's after work, looking nervous. I can't talk about ongoing projects, Mitch. You know that. I'm not asking you to violate any confidentiality. I just want to know if there's anything about Trevor Lang's operation that concerns you as a professional. Danny glanced around the bar, then leaned closer. Off the record? Completely. The guy's a nightmare to work with, constantly pushing us to rush jobs, cut corners. He's more concerned with his schedule than safety. Anything specific? Last week, he wanted us to sign off on electrical work that wasn't finished. Said the inspector was coming the next day and he needed everything to look complete. Did you do it? Hell no, I've got a reputation to protect. But I know other contractors who might not be so careful. I bought Danny another beer and steered the conversation to safer topics. But I'd heard enough. Trevor was running his project like a house of cards, and all it would take was one strong wind to bring it down. The next morning, I made an anonymous call to the city building department. I'd like to report some safety concerns about the construction at the downtown shopping complex, I said. What kind of concerns? Electrical work that doesn't appear to be up to code, drainage issues, that sort of thing. Can you be more specific? I gave them enough details to warrant an investigation without revealing how I'd gotten the information. Within 2 hours, city inspectors were crawling all over Trevor's project. By afternoon, work had been shut down pending a full safety review. Trevor called me at 4 o'clock, absolutely furious. You called the city on me. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play dumb with me. This has your fingerprints all over it. Trevor, I'm a construction worker. I build houses and fix kitchens. I don't know anything about your big fancy development project. This is going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then maybe you should have done it right the first time. You have no idea who you're messing with. Actually, I think I do. You're a corner-cutting developer who tried to buy my wife and got upset when I didn't roll over and play dead. This isn't over. No, it's not. I hung up and immediately called Lyle. Trevor just threatened me. I want everything documented. Already on it. I've been keeping detailed records of all his contacts with you. Good. Because I think things are about to get interesting. That evening, Jenna came home in a state I'd never seen before. She was crying, angry, and completely disheveled. You destroyed him, she said. You destroyed everything. I have no idea what you're talking about. The project's shut down. Trevor could lose millions. His investors are furious. That's terrible. Maybe he should have followed building codes. You know this wasn't about building codes, wasn't it? Because from what I hear, there were some serious safety issues with that project. She stared at me with something approaching hatred. You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying seeing justice served, if that's what you mean. Justice? You called destroying an innocent man's business justice? Innocent? I laughed. Jenna, your boyfriend tried to buy you from me like you were a piece of property. He offered me $50,000 to divorce you so he could have you. That's not true. I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Jenna's face went through several emotions as she listened: disbelief, shock, anger, and finally something that might have been recognition. He was trying to help, she said weakly. He was trying to eliminate an obstacle. There's a difference. You recorded him without his permission. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. This is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. She sat down heavily on the couch, looking defeated. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the past few months, the humiliation, the way our friends had turned against me. There's something else you should know, I said. Trevor tried to pick up your sister before he settled for you. What? 3 months ago, at that charity event. He hit on Cassie first, kept pursuing her even after she said no. You were his second choice, Jenna. That's a lie. Ask Cassie. Ask her about the phone calls, the text messages, the way he kept pushing even after she made it clear she wasn't interested. I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. She wanted to dismiss what I was saying, but something about it rang true. Why didn't she tell me? Because she didn't want to hurt you. Because she thought you deserved to be happy, even if it was with a creep who saw you as a consolation prize. Jenna buried her face in her hands. When she looked up, her makeup was smeared and her eyes were red. What do you want from me, Mitch? I want you to admit that this whole thing was a mistake. I want you to acknowledge that you threw away 8 years of marriage for a guy who sees you as a trophy. And then what? We just go back to the way things were? I looked at her sitting there, broken and defeated, and realized something important. I didn't want to go back to the way things were. The past few weeks had shown me what I was capable of when I stopped being the accommodating husband. I'd discovered a strength I didn't know I had. No, I said. We don't go back. We can't go back. So, what happens now? Now you decide what kind of person you want to be, and I decide whether I can live with that person. She nodded slowly, understanding passing between us for the first time in months. I need some time to think, she said. Take all the time you need. But Jenna? Yeah? Next time you decide to blow up your life, make sure you're prepared for the consequences. She went upstairs without another word, leaving me alone in the living room with the satisfaction of a job well done. Trevor Lang had learned not to underestimate a blue-collar worker with nothing left to lose. And Jenna had learned that actions had consequences, even for beautiful real estate agents who thought they could have everything they wanted. But the best part? The whole town now knew that Mitch Harlan wasn't someone you could push around and forget about. I'd fought back, and I'd won. For the first time in months, I slept like a baby. The next few days brought a strange kind of peace. Trevor's project remained shut down, while city inspectors went through every inch of the construction with microscopic attention to detail. Word around town was that he'd have to tear down significant portions and start over, assuming his investors didn't pull out entirely. Jenna moved into the guest bedroom and spoke to me only when necessary. She'd stopped going out in the evenings, stopped taking mysterious phone calls. I assumed she and Trevor were still in contact, but whatever they were discussing, it wasn't happening in my house. On Thursday, Cassie called me at work. Can you meet me for lunch? There's something I need to tell you. We met at Murphy's Diner, the same place where Trevor had tried to buy me off. Cassie looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. Jenna came to see me last night, she said after we'd ordered. What did she want? To ask me about Trevor, about what you said, and I told her the truth, about him hitting on me, about the calls and texts, about how persistent he was even after I made it clear I wasn't interested. I studied her face. How did she take it? Not well. She accused me of lying, of conspiring with you to break them up, said I was jealous of her happiness. But I could see the doubt in her eyes. I think part of her already knew something was off about Trevor. She just didn't want to admit it. The waitress brought our sandwiches, and we ate in relative silence for a few minutes. Finally, Cassie spoke again. There's something else. Trevor called me yesterday. I looked up sharply. What did he want? He wanted to know if I'd told you about his previous approaches. When I said yes, he got angry, started making threats. What kind of threats? Nothing specific. Just said I'd regret getting involved in his business. That he had ways of dealing with people who caused him problems. A cold anger settled in my stomach. It was one thing for Trevor to come after me. I could handle myself. But threatening Cassie crossed a line I hadn't even known existed. Did you record the call? No, but I made notes right afterward. Times, dates, exactly what he said. Good. We might need that. After lunch, I drove straight to Lyle's office. He was reviewing surveillance photos when I walked in, looking like he'd been expecting me. "Let me guess," he said. "Trevor's escalating." He threatened Cassie. When? I told him about the phone call, about Trevor's reaction to learning that his secret was out. Lyle made notes and added them to the growing file he'd been keeping. "This guy's unraveling," he said. "The project shutdown, the public humiliation, now finding out that people know his history. He's feeling cornered." Dangerous? Potentially. Guys like Trevor are used to being in control. When they lose that control, they can do stupid things. What do you recommend? Document everything, keep your distance, and maybe consider getting a restraining order. Against Trevor? Against both of them, if necessary. I know Jenna's your wife, but she's been part of this whole mess. If things get ugly, you want legal protection. I thought about that as I drove back to the construction site. The idea of getting a restraining order against my own wife felt surreal. But then again, everything about the past few months had felt surreal. That evening, I was working late in my garage when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Trevor's BMW. Apparently, he'd gotten it cleaned up after my decorating job. He got out of the car and walked toward the garage, his expensive suit looking out of place in my blue-collar neighborhood. I kept working on the cabinet I was refinishing, not looking up when he appeared in the doorway. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't." "You've caused me a lot of problems, Mitch." "Have I? That's terrible." He stepped into the garage, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. This was not a good sign. "You think you're clever, don't you? Calling the city, getting my project shut down. I told you before, I don't know anything about your project." "Bullshit. And now you've got Cassie lying about me, poisoning Jenna against me." I set down my sandpaper and looked at him directly. "Cassie's not lying about anything. You did hit on her. You did keep calling her after she said no, and you did threaten her yesterday." "I never threatened anyone." "Really?" "Because I've got a pretty detailed account of your conversation with her. Times, dates, exact quotes." His face flushed red. "You people are all the same. Small-town losers who can't stand to see someone successful." "Successful? Is that what you call it when your project gets shut down for safety violations?" "Those violations were minor. Paperwork issues. Paperwork issues that could have gotten someone killed." "You don't know what you're talking about." I stood up, and Trevor took a step back. He was taller than me, but I had 40 pounds of muscle on him and 20 years of manual labor. More importantly, I wasn't drunk. "Here's what I know," I said calmly. "I know you tried to buy my wife like she was a used car. I know you hit on her sister first and settled for Jenna when you got rejected. I know you've got a history of cheating on your wives and harassing women. And I know you're standing in my garage, drunk, making threats. I'm not threatening anyone." "Then what are you doing here, Trevor?" He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him trying to decide whether to escalate or retreat. Finally, his shoulders sagged. "I just want this to end," he said. "The project, the problems, all of it. Then walk away. Leave my wife alone, leave her sister alone, and go find someone else to manipulate." "It's not that simple." "Sure it is." "You want simple? Here's simple. Stay away from my family, or I'll make your life even more complicated than it already is." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." He turned and walked back to his car without another word. I watched him drive away, then went inside and called Lyle to report the encounter. "He's definitely unraveling," Lyle said. "Showing up at your house drunk, trying to intimidate you. This is textbook behavior for someone who's lost control." "What's his next move likely to be?" "Hard to say. He might try to go after your business, make trouble for you at work, or he might just cut his losses and disappear." "And Jenna?" "That depends on how much she really cares about him versus how much she cares about her reputation." I hung up and went to find my wife. She was in the living room, watching television with the sound turned low. "Trevor was just here," I said. She looked up sharply. "What did he want?" "To blame me for his problems." "He was drunk." "Is he okay?" "I don't know, and I don't care. But I want you to know that if he comes here again, I'm calling the police." "Mitch?" "No, I'm done playing games, Jenna. Your boyfriend is becoming unstable, and I won't have him threatening my family." "He wouldn't hurt anyone." "Are you sure about that?" "Because he threatened your sister yesterday." She stared at me. "What?" "Called her up, made vague threats about people who cause him problems. Cassie's scared, Jenna. Your boyfriend is scaring your own sister." I could see the internal struggle playing out on her face. Part of her still wanted to defend Trevor, to believe in the fantasy she'd built around their relationship. But another part was starting to see the reality of who he really was. "I need to think," she said finally. Think fast, because this situation is about to come to a head, and when it does, you're going to have to choose which side you're on. I left her there and went to bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring the final confrontation. One way or another, this mess was about to be resolved. Friday morning brought news that changed everything. Lyle called me at 6 a.m., his voice tight with urgency. Turn on Channel 8 News. Now. I fumbled for the remote and found the local morning show. The lead story made my blood run cold. Local developer arrested in domestic violence incident. The reporter was standing outside the police station, explaining how Trevor Lang had been arrested after a confrontation with his ex-wife at her workplace. Apparently, he'd shown up at her office demanding money, claiming she owed him for their divorce settlement. When she refused, he'd grabbed her arm and threatened her in front of several witnesses. The victim, who has not been named, had previously filed a restraining order against Lang following their divorce 2 years ago. The reporter continued, police say this is not the first time they've been called regarding disputes between the former couple. I turned off the television and called Cassie immediately. Did you see the news? She asked before I could say anything. Just watched it. Where's Jenna? I don't know. I've been calling her all morning, but she's not answering. I checked the garage. Jenna's car was gone. She'd left early, probably as soon as the news broke. I could only imagine what was going through her mind right now. At work, the news was all anyone could talk about. Word traveled fast in a small town, and by 10 a.m., everyone knew that Mitch Harlan's wife had been involved with the developer who'd just been arrested for domestic violence. Ray pulled me aside during our morning break. You okay, boss? I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. This Trevor thing, it's got to be hard on Jenna. Jenna made her choices. Now she has to live with the consequences. What are you going to do? Nothing. I don't need to do anything. Trevor just destroyed himself. And it was true. Everything I'd been working toward, exposing Trevor for what he really was, showing Jenna the truth about her boyfriend, proving to the town that I wasn't someone to be pushed around, had just been accomplished by Trevor himself. My phone rang around noon. It was Jenna, and she sounded terrible. Can you meet me at home? We need to talk. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I found her sitting at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Her eyes were red from crying, and her hands shook as she poured coffee. I saw the news, I said. He called me from jail, wanted me to post bail. What did you tell him? I hung up on him. She was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee cup like it held the answers to all her problems. Cassie told me the truth, she said finally, about Trevor hitting on her first. About the calls and texts. I know. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? She considered that. Probably not. That's why I didn't tell you. You had to see it for yourself. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're human. You wanted something different, something exciting. Trevor offered that. He offered the illusion of that. The reality was, God, Mitch, what if I'd left you for him? What if I'd actually gone through with it? But you didn't. Only because you fought back. If you'd just rolled over and accepted it like everyone expected you to. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. We both knew how close she'd come to making the biggest mistake of her life. I owe you an apology, she said, for all of it. The announcement at dinner, the humiliation, the way I treated you. Yes, you do. I'm sorry, Mitch. I'm so sorry. I looked at her sitting there, broken and remorseful, and felt something I hadn't expected. Pity, not love, not yet, but pity for the woman who'd almost thrown away everything good in her life for a fantasy. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. That depends on you. What do you mean? I mean, you have to decide who you want to be going forward. The woman who announced she didn't believe in monogamy and humiliated her husband in front of his friends, or someone different. I want to be different. I want to be better. Then you need to start making amends. Real ones, not just to me, but to everyone you hurt during this whole mess. How do I do that? You start by telling the truth. To your friends, to your coworkers, to anyone who'll listen. You tell them that Trevor Lang is not the man you thought he was, and that your husband was right to fight back. And then? Then we see if there's anything left worth saving. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I love you, Mitch. I know I have a funny way of showing it, but I do love you. I know you do. The question is whether love is enough to rebuild what we had. Is it? I thought about that. 3 months ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now, after everything that had happened, I wasn't sure. The man who'd sat quietly through that dinner announcement was gone, replaced by someone harder, more confident, less willing to compromise. "We'll find out," I said. That evening, we went to O'Malley's together. It was the first time we'd been out as a couple since this whole mess started, and I could feel every eye in the place watching us. Dave Peterson and Jim Walsh were at their usual table, and after an hour of liquid courage, they approached us. "Hey, Mitch," Dave said awkwardly. "How's it going? Better than expected?" "We heard about Trevor Lang. That's rough." "Is it? I think it's justice." Jim shifted uncomfortably. "Look, about what we said before. Maybe we were out of line." "Maybe? Okay. We were definitely out of line. You were right to fight for your marriage." I looked at these two men who'd been my friends for 20 years, who'd abandoned me when I needed them most and felt absolutely nothing. "I wasn't fighting for my marriage," I said. "I was fighting for my self-respect." "What's the difference?" Dave asked. "The difference is that self-respect can't be taken away from you. It can only be given up." Jenna squeezed my hand under the table, and for the first time in months, it felt natural. Later, as we walked home through the cool October night, she asked the question I'd been expecting. "Do you forgive me?" "I'm working on it." "How long will that take?" "I don't know, as long as it takes." "And us? Do we have a future?" I stopped walking and looked at her in the streetlight. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But she was also the woman who'd tried to destroy our marriage for a man who turned out to be a predator. "That depends on whether you can live with the man I've become," I said. "Because I'm not going back to being the guy who sits quietly while his wife announces she wants to sleep around." "I don't want you to go back. I like this version of you better. Even if it means you don't always get your way? Especially then." We walked the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like we might actually make it through. Trevor Lang pleaded guilty to harassment and was sentenced to 6 months in jail and 3 years probation. His development company folded within a month, and he left town as soon as his sentence was completed. I never saw him again. Jenna quit her job at Pinnacle Properties and started her own small real estate firm, specializing in modest homes for working families.